jewelry making friends. My name is Joey Balestrieri. Welcome to my work table. I have done an unboxing of this beautiful monthly subscription that is full of beads from the Czech Republic, and this box is called Bohem style. And this particular subscription box comes with a little code, personal code inside the box that takes you to a video tutorial for 2 projects, and everything that you need for those 2 projects are in this box. And I can, put a picture of that. I can also link this box below. The shipping is fabulous. The beads that are in this box every month are fabulous. It's something I really enjoy getting, but I never do the project. If you're a person that loves kits, or you love something that's already thought out for you and then you have everything at your fingertips, this is wonderful. But I tend to do my own thing. It's just the way I am, I guess. Too many years of making jewelry. So I have my little ingredients. This is pretty much everything from the box, but I have supplemented a few things here, a little length of copper chain, a few copper spacers, some copper crimp tubes, a little lobster claw clasp, some small jump rings. So I just kind of pulled from my stash. The box did come with silver findings, and the projects that you have the ingredients for were silver, but I switched to copper. I just like it better, and I was kind of inspired by these beautiful Czech glass leaves with the little copper wash on them. So I decided to do the whole thing in copper, and I have had so much fun. So if you see the start of my little bracelet design here, I was playing with these gorgeous beads. I actually have one left. It's this cool little triangle bead. It is not two-sided. It has the Picasso wash on the back side, and the hole goes through the top part here of this bead. So I decided that I wanted to string them side by side. So what I have here is 2 equal strands of these soft flex metallics copper color. It's an all-purpose beading wire, extremely flexible. It is a 49 strand, which means there are 49 little strands of stainless steel cable encased inside this beautiful copper coating. And so it's one of my favorite beading wires. So what I did is, I'll just come back this out. I took 2 equal lengths of this, and I did that because the holes on the Czech glass beads are all a little bit different. So I was able to get 2 strands through this 6mm Czech glass faceted round, but only a single strand would go through the little triangle beads. So I decided to hold these wires together by putting them both through this 6mm bead, and then separating the wires and stringing on one of those triangles on either side, bringing them together again with another Czech glass bead, and then separating and stringing those on, and then bringing them together once again with one of those 6mm beads. And that's going to be the start of my bracelet, and I'm ready to crimp this section. So I love sharing these kinds of projects because when I want beads to do a thing, I find a way, and there are ways around, like when wires, that don't fit through holes and things like that. So I'm kind of sharing this for that reason. These are number 2 crimp tubes that I have in my dish, and I'm going to move this out of the way because I just glanced in the camera and realized that it's really making the lens and the focus compete with what I'm showing you. So I actually am going to use this little scrap that I had left over of copper chain, and my idea is to make my little section here, which I've already started. I'll show you what I did. These are all my little simple loops on the components for a cluster section, and I just saved one out to do. The one that's the most complicated was this one, and I'll show you exactly what I did. I saved it one to do with you, but the rest is just very repetitive, a ball head pin and a simple loop. And that's all that those are. So I have those all ready. This is going to be my final little drop on the end of my chain when the bracelet is all finished, and it's the exact same thing, a little pattern strung onto a ball head pin and a simple loop. So the idea that I have for this is to crimp this chain right onto this end, and then I'm going to also crimp here and then create my cluster section, my little movable dimensional section. And then I'm going to put one more of these beads and crimp again, and then trim away one of these wires because these beautiful beads are going on and only a single wire fits through these beautiful flowers. So, and I have a separate idea for this little this little grouping here. They are simply I just took 22 gauge copper wire and made the tiniest little jump rings just because the holes on these were really small, and I just fed a jump ring through the little hole, both of these, the dagger bead and this little flattened kind of teardrop. The holes were like a briolette across the top, so I can actually show you really quickly. I saved one because when you do that, these are really tiny little jump rings, but when you do that, sometimes you need to open your jump rings really wide in order to wiggle them through the top hole like this. So that's all I did. I just saved that last one just so it wouldn't be boring watching me do the same step over and over again, and just make sure it's closed really well. So all my little drops are ready. So let's start. I'm going to grab my magical crimping plier. You could definitely use a conventional fold over crimp here if you wanted to, but I just really love this, especially when I'm going to be doing these transitions and cutting away a wire, because it takes this little number 2 crimp tube and turns it into a tiny little bead. So I really like that. So I'm just going to kind of wiggle this down just a little bit. I want to give myself a little bit more space to make my loop and my crimp. So I have that nice and tight and ready to go, and I'm going to take my crimp tube and feed it on both wires. I did leave one a little bit shorter because it's the one that's going to get cut away. So just pull it down. Not all crimp tubes are created equal, and every now and then you'll pick one up that has a little burr of metal on the inside or something going on with it, and it looks like, of course, because the camera is going, that's the one I pick up. It is Murphy's Law. It is always surprising to me. Actually, the links on this chain are really cool because they are not solid. So I can open these if I want to just go ahead and make my loop and then attach it. And that's what I think I'll do. Then I won't have the chain hanging off. So I'm just going to leave that one wire hanging out and feed this wire back through the crimp tube. And if possible, I do like to get it inside that first bead, and it looks like it's in there pretty well. Okay, and now if you've never seen the magical crimping plier before, instead of having all the little divots, it has just one well or one little like hole in the center. So I'm just going to get a hold of that crimp tube and just make sure that I feel that it's in the little well. You'll get a feel for it. There is a little bit of a learning curve with this. Like right now I can tell that it is not centered. It's not inside. So if I crush down now, I'm just going to mangle the crimp tube there. Now I can feel that it is actually in the well. And once it is, you just close the plier, and when you take it away, you have pinched the 4 corners of that crimp tube. And now you do the same thing in the opposite direction. Just turn it so that your corners are now fit right into that little well. And again, I can kind of feel, I've done so many of these, I can kind of feel when it's in place, and I don't close the tool until I can feel that I have it centered. And it looks like that is good. And then when you close it, you just keep it in there and gently open and close your pliers and go around until you just don't feel that the tool is doing anything. And when you're done with that and you take it away, you have this absolutely perfect little bead. The crimp tubes come in gold, copper, silver, gunmetal, so it's just a really wonderful way to crimp. And now I can cut as closely as I can that little wire that was hanging out, and that is done. And I'm going to just, I did not reduce the length of my scrap of chain yet, because my idea was to go ahead and create my pattern with these beautiful flowers, and then whatever length it ends up being, I'll make up the difference in what I need in length with my chain. So it's a really forgiving way to make a bracelet and accomplish the length that you want. And it's also really nice to have a chain that is not soldered, because I don't have to cut a length and I can, you know, make easy adjustments. So let me get all my beads back on. I should have put a bead bug there, but so that's the beginning of my bracelet, and already I love it. I have to say, I think that magical crimp just does a fabulous job. I already love it. Let me set that aside, and now here I am going to do another crimp, and this time I am just going to crimp right in the middle of these two wires. Now sometimes with the 49 strand and a number 2 crimp tube, sometimes I will take a little scrap of this same wire and feed it inside the tube, just to take up space inside the tube and make sure that I'm getting a really good crimp. But these crimp tubes are not, they're a little bit smaller inside. They have a nice thick wall, but I feel like they'll be okay. And since it's not holding a clasp, it's really just to hold the beads in place. And I'm just going to do that same thing again. I'm just going to fit that tube in the well. Make sure before I close it that I have it centered. Okay, that looks great. And now I can go to a single strand, but I think what I'm going to do is create my little cluster right here first. So I have everything ready to go. All my little simple loops are done. And I'm just going to show you how I did this little piece. So I just used 22 gauge wire because I wanted a really small spiral, and the holes in this little flower were quite small. And I'm going to grab my Xuron round nose pliers just because they're so tiny. Actually, I can use my Xuron crimping pliers. And this is the plier I like if I decide to do a fold over crimp, but it has such a tiny tip that it's really great for making a really small spiral, for starting your spiral to be really small. And I'm just going to, they don't really have to match. If I were doing earrings, I would try to match the spiral that I did on this piece, but I'm just going to get a few little turns in here. And I did hammer the other one, and this is 22 gauge wire, so it does not take much hammering. And I did it to work harden, but also because I just really like the texture of wire. I really like the way these spirals look when they're hammered. So if you are going to be bothered by a tiny bit of pounding, then fast forward or pause, because I'm going to just have my bench block off to the side. I'll show you what it looks like. This is my little tiny bench block. It's really, really heavy, and I literally just keep it on the side of my table. I can show you what I'm doing. So mute your volume if you don't, but it's not much pounding because this wire is so fine. And I'm just going to flatten that little spiral, just like the way it looks. And that is that. And that just work hardens it, but it also adds that little bit of texture. And then I took one of the little seed beads and fed that on for just a little dot of turquoise. And then my little flower. Where's the hole? The holes on these were so tiny. There it is. So that's why I went down to the smaller wire, and I'm just going to push that into place. And for all of my simple loops for this little cluster section, I used my 1.5 millimeter one-step looper. I get questions a lot about, there's 3 sizes to this, and I get questions a lot about which size, you know, to use for which. And what I will say is you can do almost everything that you need to do with the medium size, which is the 2.25 millimeter one-step looper. This just makes a medium size loop. This one makes a smaller loop, and I mostly use it if I'm doing really dainty earrings or a cluster like this where I just need a loop big enough to thread onto my stringing material. And then there's a really large one. This makes a pretty big loop. This is the 3 millimeter loop, and I get a lot of questions about this tool because I have a problem with arthritis in my hand, and I make a lot of jewelry, and when I use this instead of my pliers for simple loops where I'm avoiding that constant twisting motion, I end up not having as much problems with my hand. I don't flare up the pain, but I do get a lot of questions, and some people have said I only have a budget for one because it's not a cheap tool. And I would advise, if you only have a budget for one and you would like to try it, that if you get the medium, the 2.25 millimeter, you can do almost everything that you need to do. I do have the 3 sizes and I use all 3, but that's my advice. So since I have a bead on here, I'm going to thread my wire all the way through the tool, and there's a hole, a guide hole at the very back of the tool, and I'm going to let my beads come right up to the front jaw of the plier. And I don't know how well, it's a brown bead on a black tool, so I hope you can see, but I want to make sure that this is about 1 millimeter back before I close the jaw of the plier, so I'm not putting any pressure on that bead. So I'm just going to gently close the tool right here. The back jaw makes a perfect clean cut. There's my scrap of wire. And then before I close it all the way, I'm going to pull my bead down so it is away from the jaw of the plier, and that also centers the loop on the wire. And when I take it away, I have a perfect loop every single time, consistent. When I make my simple loops with my pliers and, you know, by hand, just for me at least, the human element of eye and hand coordination means that no two are exactly alike. But with that tool, even though you won't really see these loops, but with that tool, they're all exactly alike, and I really, really like that. So what I think I'm going to do is go ahead and leave both wires because it really doesn't matter, but it will just be a little bit substantial here for my little dangle section. And let's see, I'm going to start with one of these, and I'm just going to create a little cluster. And the thing about these clusters is they don't usually look so great when you're stringing, or like when they're laying on your bead mat, but when they look wonderful is when they're laying against the body, because your wrist holds this cluster section up, and that's where you get the beautiful dimension. So let me get these on and I'll show you. I love this little element in a bracelet. It's just, to me, it's so pretty. Let's see, I think I'll go here next. It doesn't so much matter how you string on a section like this because you know, it moves around, and the only thing I try to do is not string 2 of my components that are exactly alike right next to each other. That's kind of the method to my madness. And then there's my little section. And so you see, when you're wearing it as a bracelet, your skin, your hand holds it up, and I just love that. And I mean, you can do like an entire bracelet, they call it a cha-cha style, but if you cluster for an entire piece, it can be really heavy and also really busy. But when you do a tiny little section like this, it's almost like a living bead, and it just creates so much movement and so much interest and dimension. It goes from flat, flat, flat to like all of this beautiful dimension. So I love doing that in my jewelry. So now I'm going to repeat the same thing that I did before I started the cluster. Thread another one of those 6mm Czech glass beads, and I want it to be, you know, I don't want it to be super tight, but let me zoom in a little bit so you can see. I don't want it to be super tight, but I do want it to kind of, I don't want to see gaps, so if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is feed this crimp tube on to both wires and get it down. This is another crimp tube in this batch that has a little issue. Okay, so I'm just going to get my magical crimping plier in here, and what I'll do is center that crimp tube in my tool, and before I close the tool, I'm going to pull this down and have a look at the space, and you can even turn it upside down that way and see that it's not too crowded, but everything is right next to each other. So I'm just going to pull that tube down a little bit. I think that's good, and repeat the same thing. That is so beautiful. I love it. Okay, let me zoom us back out. Okay, so now I can just like see my little grouping of flowers and leaves and elements on my bracelet. I should do it on this wrist where I don't have anything, and I just love that. And like I say, it's a little bit, these little cluster sections can be a little bit funky looking when they're not on the body, but once it is on your wrist, it does that. Everything stands up and you have that little bit of movement. If you're a fiddler with your jewelry, that is so wonderful. And now I am going to remove one of these strands. I'll take and cut away this shortest one because I already checked and my other beads do not accommodate 2 strands. So this is where I love this little trick. Make sure I'm cutting the shorter one as close as possible and nothing is sharp. So this is where I love this little trick of, you know, making this work the way that I want, even when 2 wires don't go through my beads. And the other thing I love about this soft flex copper wire is that there is little areas here where you can see a tiny bit of my wire and even on my loop. And if you wanted to, you could, we got these beautiful turquoise seed beads in this box, you could like fill that in, but with a soft flex, it comes in such beautiful colors. I don't feel the need to do it. I actually think, I've always felt that this little bit of color just adds to my design. So, and there's so many color options with it. So now I can string the rest of my beads and kind of decide on my pattern. Isn't that pretty? I just love that. Let me pull my little dish back in, just so that I can choose what I want to do for spacers. I was playing with this as a spacer, these cute little triangle beads, and we got these, this box had these tiny little rondelles. Can you see the dimension on this bead? It's a triangle, but it's unusual. It's really dimensional and it's smaller on this side than it is on the other side. So when you string it, you kind of get that look. So I was playing with that as a spacer in between my flowers. Let's see. And I also wanted to play with adding a little bit of metal here. Let me see what this looks like. And it does, you know, this is my favorite part of making jewelry, is this little bit of pattern play here. That is so gorgeous. just play. I like that. I think I actually want to switch it though. I think I'm going to do this little section there and put my copper spacer here. Okay, I love that. Okay, now I am done with this, and now I'm going to lobster claw, jump ring, and I need one more crimp tube. 1 second, let me grab a crimp tube. I can either go ahead and make my loop like I did on the other end, which is fine because those I can open that, and I am just going to make this loop. I literally used the last little bit of this copper wire that was on my spool. I don't like to waste it, and so that's why I'm a little bit short here, because I just didn't want to waste it. I don't know what is up with this batch of crimp tubes, but I normally use either the Soft Flex #2 crimp tubes, or I get a little pack that is made for the magical crimping plier, and I found this bag of #2 crimp tubes in my stash, and so far I've had to take out like 4 of them that my wire did not want to go through. So if you are interested in #2 crimp tubes and the magical crimping plier, I will link my good ones, the ones that I am not struggling with like I have been with these on this project. So I am just going to get kind of match this loop to the one that I did on the other end. And as I said, I already know that this wire do not go through this flower bead, so I'm not even going to try, because I already tried that when I started the bracelet. And I just want to make sure, even though it's a small section here, I do want to make sure that I don't have any weird gaps and that my bracelet is not rigid. This is the sweetest bracelet. I think I can get this down just a little bit more. In fact, let me open this jump ring. It'll give me a little bit of leverage. Give me a little something to hold on to. Should have done that to begin with. And go ahead and put my lobster claw clasp on. Then I'll have something to hold on to. Make sure that jump ring is closed really, really well. Okay, that's better. Now I have something to hold on to. Just give that a little tug. And again, make sure this is not rigid. That is perfect. And I am going to repeat the exact same thing here. Just center that in my tool, close it. There's the little 4 corners. Center it in the opposite direction and just go around and around until it is a little copper bead. I love crimping this way. I do the fold over crimp method sometimes, but I love crimping this way. That is just beautiful. If you feel like you don't have a perfect round, you can always replace the tube back into your plier and just go around a little bit more. But look at that, it's just so pretty. So I don't normally like to trim right here. I normally like to run my bead stringing wire, my tail, down through a couple of beads and make my cut away from the clasp. But sometimes it's just not possible. And so like on these flower beads, the stringing material just didn't go back through them. And so I combated that by crimping off this section and then going into a single strand for those. But I love this. I think this is the sweetest bracelet. And now this is going to be fully adjustable. So for my wrist, like 6 3/4 or so is right there, but I want to make it adjustable. So I'm going to come down about here and open this link. And I'll take off the excess links. This is a nice thick chain. I'll take off the excess links here. I want that link. And here's where I'm going to add my little drop that I created. And again, this was done the exact same way. Just had fun with a little bead pattern and a ball head pin and a simple loop. And I'm going to feed that on. And you don't have to do that. For me, for my eye, I just cannot stand to have just an empty link at the end of a bracelet. And so now this bracelet is fully adjustable. Anybody can wear this. I mean, honestly, I just looked at it. This would be a great anklet because I have done, you know, this little bit of chain for my closure, and it just really features like all the beads in the box. I absolutely just love this. I think it's so pretty. And my idea with these little guys and these little jump rings was to add them to the length of chain down here or even up here. Let me see where this will land on my wrist and see if I even want to do that. If I do it there, I could have a little bit of dangle. I am going to do it. So I did 3 of each. I just put those little jump rings through each one, and I think I'm going to come right here and just add these little drops along the length of my chain. Okay, this is so pretty. Look at that. I love adding that little extra movement, just kind of embellishing the closure slash extender chain. And like I said, with your little cha-cha section, when you put it on, you know, you'll get it to a spot where your body, your arm it's flat underneath the little cha-cha section. And the way to hook a bracelet like this is to let the extender chain just lay over your wrist, and then it's very easy to clasp it on the, you know, with your other hand. And so look at this beautiful piece, and I love the drama of having this chain here. I may even shorten it now that I have it on. But I actually love the drama of the dangle. I think that is so pretty. I may wear it a little bit and see if I want to remove a couple of links. But if you're going to do a design like this, if you have a chain that the links are, you're able to open them, it's really easy to make these final adjustments. But I actually really love it. I mean, if I went for coffee with friends, or my sister-in-law and I love to go have a glass of wine, that is just the perfect little summer bracelet. I love, love, love this. I hope that you all found some inspiration or picked up a little tidbit of technique. And if you are interested in the Bohem style box, I will put links below to the box, and you can also shop the website. I think you will be really impressed. I am fairly new to this company, but so far I really love everything that I have gotten from them. So I thank you so much for watching. My email will also be in the description box. So if you have not sent me your little work crew that have furry faces, feathers, gills, I've been getting everything from turtles. I even have one of our friends in our community has bears on her property, and she sent me a picture of the bear visiting their backyard. So yeah, send me your photos. Everyone really enjoys the nature and, you know, the beauty of the wildlife and the inside house pet life as well. So I thank you for watching. I hope everyone is safe and well and having fun on your beading mats. Ciao, jewelry making friends.